This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Very excited about today, Sean. I'm very excited about every weekend edition because it is my favourite show of the week, because it's competitive. It's about the two of us each nominating what we think is the biggest story of the week, the most remarkable story, the sleeper business story, one that's kind of flying under the radar a wee bit, and then our favourite business adjacent story. Every week we are joined by a judge to pick a winner. That judge does a sterling job every week. He's our Fear and Greed colleague, Adam Lang. Adam, good morning.
Good morning, Michael. Good morning, Sean.
Morning, Adam.
Now, may I have a quick story?
Oh,
yes.
Do you know what my favourite day of the week was at school time?
Happy Friday.
Wednesdays.
Oh, you were such a nerd.
Because Wednesdays was sporting day, and in the afternoon you got to play footy. So that was my favourite day of the week, Wednesday. So I get it, Michael. The weekend edition, favourite show of the week.
But this is about as far from that as you can get. This is like a competition for nerds.
Wow.
I think of it as full contact.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I suppose in a way it is, because sometimes with my flailing arms, as I start to wildly gesture during these stories, there could be contact. So anyway.
I've copped the odd biff.
Now, just very quickly, Adam, in, let's say, 12 seconds or less, can you give us
And
your
Michael's
criteria?
just taken 4 of those. Go.
Yeah.
Go.
Topicality, timeliness, economic impact. My subjective bias, of course, comes into it. And really today, I think we're going to focus on melodrama.
Oh,
really?
Come on.
You could have focused on
That's not
melodrama
fair.
last week was my Oscar-winning performance.
It was superb.
And this week I've got nothing. There's nothing left.
Oh,
I am
Good. Then the field is equal.
I am a hollowed out, shriveled up husk of a human. I left everything that I have in last week's episode. So I don't mean to kind of
Clearly not.
downplay your expectations.
That's right, Adam. Clearly not.
Biggest story of the week. Sean, shall we get into this?
I'll go first. Adam. I have to melodrama here. Adam, there has been rampant collusion between the competitors on this one. And if you were worth your salt, you would kick Michael out right now before hearing another word. Absolutely.
I love it, Sean.
Because he rang me during the week and he said, well, let's not fight over the economy. Of course, that's the biggest story. Let's do something else. That, my good man, is collusion. I, of course, said, no,
Evil collusion.
Michael, no. But he convinced me. He used his melodramatic ways.
That's right. It was a 40-minute speech to Sean about the importance. And, oh, God, it had some powerful points in it. And in the end, he agreed just to shut me up.
Collusion.
Sean, it felt like you shifted to pantomime there.
Is that melodrama or not? Behind you,
He's
Adam, behind you. I did tell you, I once saw John Inman in a pantomime in Bath in the UK.
Brilliant.
And John Inman, for those, many people would not know John Inman, but there was a TV show which was before my time really called Are You Being Served? And he was the very camp shop attendant and he was hilarious. And I saw him in a pantomime and oh my word, he was extremely funny. Anyway, I digress.
You sure do.
We have agreed that the economy is the biggest story.
Okay.
Michael colluded. I didn't. And although even though we agreed.
Can we point out specifically what part of the economy we found was the biggest story this week? And it was...
Well, it was the pace of economic growth. 1.1% for the month. Slowest rate in more than 30 years outside the pandemic. On a per capita basis, it went backwards. 5 months in a row that's happened.
GDP.
March quarter, economy grew by 0.1%. Long run average for economic growth in Australia is like 2.75%, 3%. We're at 1.1%. Very, very weak. Household savings, the rate fell to less than 1%, below pre-pandemic levels. That's just a recap. So we can't include that.
Yep.
Okay.
And Adam, this is very, very, very important that I don't want you, the fact that Sean has given all of these details, I don't want that to colour your kind of perspective on his story that he's about to give you.
Okay.
Because his next story is not as good.
Listen to the colluder, Adam. Listen to the colluder.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided, I didn't decide. I disagreed with him ferociously and then went along. I think the fact that they need to be vaguely economics, the main big stories.
Okay.
So I've gone with Michelle Bullock before Senate estimates this week. Some very, very interesting stuff which would have got a lot more noise except for the fact that economic growth figures, which were crap, were out on the same day. She said that the Reserve Bank will raise interest rates if it fears inflation is getting out of control and not heading back towards the preferred 2 to 3% target. Fair enough. We've sort of heard that before. When she was asked whether she'd lift interest rates during an election cycle, she said, hell yeah. Well, she didn't actually say hell yeah.
It feels like you could be paraphrasing there, Sean.
I might be. She basically said that the board would always put inflation first. If the data says move, then they'll move. In fact, I remember a discussion once involving Ian Macfarlane, a Reserve Bank governor of a couple ago, and he made the point, wouldn't it be political if interest rates needed to move one way or another in an election cycle and you didn't shift them? That'd be just as political as if you did shift them. I thought that's a very good point. Anyway, Ms. Bullock also said the federal government's $300 energy rebate and other state government rebates will broadly be ignored. That's when she's thinking about inflation and interest rates. They're just a one-off hit. So what they're worried about is long-term inflation or medium to long-term inflation. Bottom line from Michelle Bullock, the economy is still on a narrow path of getting inflation back to target without large job losses. But that path is narrowing. There are plenty of uncertainties out there, but it's actually kind of good news, really. It's very hard out there, but it was sort of good news and got a bit swamped by those GDP figures, which I would like to include as part of my contribution to this category. Thank you very much, Michael.
Which clearly it is not included. Because, Adam, my friend...
Oh, God, here we go.
I just want to say that for the first time in a very, very long time, right, this feels like a fair fight because we've agreed on the biggest story.
You insisted.
Yes, but I secured an agreement in the end that we've agreed on the biggest story being the economic growth figures, right? That's great. So now we're just arguing over second place. This feels fair to me. I won't be saying that if I lose. If I lose, it's certainly unfair, and that is entirely Sean's fault and probably yours as well, Adam. But at the moment, it seems pretty fair. And coincidentally, something else that seems pretty fair this week is the Fair Work Commission.
Oh, nice.
Oh, God. Segue.
It was a segue. It was a glorious segue. What a week. What a week for the Fair Work Commission. They handed down a 3.75% increase in the minimum wage. That's equivalent to about $30 extra per week. Big news for a lot of people. It affects something
couple
like
of zinger boxes, Michael. Couple of zinger boxes, as our TikTok followers pointed out to us this week. But it affects something like 2.6 million workers, either on the minimum wage directly or on an award wage that's perhaps linked to it. And it affects not just those people, but it of course affects all those businesses that will be paying these higher wages. And that's where the story gets really interesting, because the Fair Work Commission seems to have done the impossible in a way and satisfy almost everyone. The unions wanted kind of 5%, but were happy with the increase because it's slightly above the rate of inflation, so workers aren't going backwards. Employers were aiming for a bit less, but were generally okay with it. And even economists who are generally a fairly kind dismal.
Oh, hang on.
Dismal?
You two are both technically economists because you both studied economics. Well, you're both a miserable bunch generally, kind of, and representative of a larger kind of population of economists, all generally miserable and dismal. God, I don't know where I'm going. I've just spent all this time insulting you guys.
He's not one for flattery, is he?
Stephen Koukoulas, Sherelle Murphy, Gareth Head.
Actually, you know what?
Lucy
Stephen
Ellis.
Koukoulas is absolutely the exception to the rule. He's the most
Sherelle
upbeat.
Murphy?
Sherelle as well, yes. Okay, so maybe Gareth Head, maybe all other economists are upbeat, and it's just you two who are the miserable ones. Anyway, we got there in the end. Economists gave it a tick as well, saying anything under 4% shouldn't add to inflation. Really, the main opposition came from small business, where the peak body said that 3.75% on top of last year's 5.75% increase was really putting pressure on its membership. But overall, I think we can mark this week on the calendar as the first time in living memory, or at least that I could find with a quick Google search, that most affected parties were okay with the decision. So, Adam, it ticks all of your boxes. And simply, for the number of people affected by this, those taking home extra money in the middle of a cost of living crisis, and the businesses required to find that extra money when nobody is spending anything, this is the biggest story of the week.
Very good. Sean, speaking of narrow paths, I think Michael has found a narrow path to victory on this one. Yeah.
So notwithstanding the fact that basically they just did what everyone expected, that's okay. They didn't talk about elections. They didn't talk about the importance of interest rates. It's just like, yeah, if they had gone 4.5% or 2.5%, maybe he should have won. This is a very narrow path you're on, Michael.
I'm just not going to say anything because it just sounds
Go
like
with it.
it sounds like I'm winning this.
I think you got it. Yeah.
So Michelle Bullock's statements.
Now, were there any points off for collusion or not for Michael's collusion?
But collusion requires two parties. Are you a reluctant colluder,
Adam,
Sean?
you have been in a room with Michael for 20 minutes, let alone 40 minutes, listening to him crap on. That's not collusion. That's abuse, bullying, that sort of behaviour.
Giving in, yielding.
That's right. Go on.
Tapping out.
Go on, Michelle Bullock. You were saying, Adam?
Well, I just didn't look. Her remarks, and I think there's great comfort in this, are consistent. So I didn't think anything she said this week was that different to what she said before. So,
irrelevant to the competition.
And the funny thing is, there was a really wise comment made by someone on the podcast this week.
Don't give me this. You heard it, Adam, didn't you? Michael jumps up and goes, well, she does all these press conferences now. We don't really care about Senate estimates anymore. I mean, how ignorant from the colluder.
I thought it was a fair point.
I think it was a wise comment. And you know what? Put it to Stephen Koukoulas, why don't you? Sean, he's a Reserve Bank watcher. See what he thought. See if he thought it was wise.
All right, Michael, you've won. Move on.
Okay. Jolly good. As I said, a fair fight for the first time in history. Now, moving on to most remarkable story, shall we? 1-0. I will go first. Sean? Most remarkable story. The most remarkable story this week, right, is one that it actually just makes you shake your head because we've talked in the past, obviously, about the NDIS, the National Disability Insurance Scheme. It is a complicated topic because it is such a worthy, necessary scheme, providing people with a disability with the help that they need through funding and support. But the thing is, it's also a very, very expensive scheme, costing around $42 billion this financial year. That's up 14% on last year, with double-digit growth being forecast for the next couple of years too. And in fact, there was modelling earlier this year, which I think kind of startled a lot of people, that showed that at its rate at that point, it would potentially blow out to $125 billion a year by 2034. So in just a decade.
So was that modelling this week, was it?
That was earlier this year. That's all context, Sean.
Interesting.
It is context to give you an idea of the size of this program, just the scale. Right. What is truly remarkable and what we learnt this week, the story this week, the big, big story this week is the extent to which it is being rorted, with criminals manipulating participants in the NDIS, using their money to buy drugs, holidays, cars, that type of thing. The allegations came from someone who should know. Had John Dardo, the integrity chief of the National Disability Insurance Agency, who runs the NDIS, told a Senate committee this week that at least 5% of the scheme's spending isn't on genuine needs. 5%. So what's that? More than $2 billion of taxpayers' money that should be helping people with a disability. $2 billion would buy a lot of support. Should be helping people with a disability, going to criminals instead, people posing essentially as providers who are supposed to help participants access the services they need. And instead, they're rorting this system. They're rorting this thing for all it's worth. Now, the minister responsible for the NDIS is Bill Shorten. He is under a huge amount of pressure now to fix it. And the thing is, he says this is not a new problem. He says the fraud started under the coalition. But I think we should kind of finish this up with the words of John Dardo, who, as we say, knows this system. He is the integrity chief of the agency. So he is watching for this. And he said, this is a quote from him, he said, "This might be hard to hear, but I think that it is outrageous that somebody can come in and claim $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 without a description or claim the entire plan in the first week of their plan." He then went on to say that if we don't go back and tune the way the system is designed now, I can tell you there is not sufficient judiciary to process the cases we have in the pipeline in the country. Now that is pretty damning. And the scale and the audacity of this whole thing, it is just remarkable. There you go. Sean, what have you got?
Houston, I have a problem. How do I compete? Do you know what? I'd just like to make one comment on the NDIS. Like, it is a great scheme. one of the issues is the number of people who genuinely need to access it is much more than they thought. Like health, autism is a great example. Far more people are being diagnosed with autism than ever before. And it's kind of like a supply side thing rather than a demand side thing. And that's a worry. Anyway, second most remarkable story, he says with his fingers crossed, his legs crossed and everything else crossed. What really was more remarkable than that pretty remarkable story this week? In fact, I'm going to throw a few in. Righto.
No, don't say good. He just said I'm going to throw a few in. That's more than one story.
Michael, you colluded on the first one. You went first on the second one. Shut up. Right. Let's talk about NVIDIA. Everyone's favorite stock, now worth $3.01 trillion US dollars, surpassing Apple as the second largest company on Wall Street. Apple's worth just only $3 trillion. Microsoft's the largest company, worth $3.15 trillion US dollars. The last time NVIDIA was worth more than Apple was 2002. Now, that's 5 years before the iPhone released. Both companies worth about $10 billion back then. NVIDIA's stock has jumped nearly 200% since late last year. No one is happier about this than the CEO, not because he runs a company. His name's Jensen Huang. Not because he runs a company. It's because all his wealth is tied up in NVIDIA stock, and he's now worth about $107 billion. Truly remarkable. But there is another truly remarkable, vaguely sort of related story that should be part of my entry into this category because it affects far more people than the NDIS. It affects the shareholders of banks, and given most of us have a superannuation fund, then that's us. The banking sector is booming. Commonwealth Bank share price hit a new all-time high this week. It's now up 30% over the past 12 months. Not even the best performer. National Australia Bank's up 38%, Westpac's up 35%, ANZ 28%. That's despite. So these banks are booming, as good as they've been in decades, and Commonwealth Bank forever. Yet, net interest margins, the difference between what a bank receives on loans and pays on deposits, is narrowing. Loan arrears are rising. That's customers who fall behind in payments. Banks, on a historical perspective, are very, very expensive. The economy is slowing. That should hurt business and personal lending. Banking analysts have sell recommendations on it. It is truly remarkable that the banks and their shareholders, their millions of shareholders, are enjoying this boom period. That truly is remarkable. Have I made it back from the moon? I do not know.
Could you just not decide on which story you were going to do, and so you decided to do two entirely different stories?
As I specifically said, they are vaguely related.
Adam, you know what to do here. There you go.
Well, we know what he did with the colluder. Go on.
This is unprecedented territory for me. But
geez.
Allow me to establish a view, and then no doubt bring on the chorus of objections.
Yes.
Michael wins.
No objections. No, I think this is reasonable.
So far.
To be honest, I don't think I can argue with that either. Go on.
No, it's such a massive story. And look, without trying to sound too worthy about it, right?
Here we go.
Ripping off the vulnerable is a special kind of evil. And I'm just so offended by it. But
well, hold on. Sometimes it's the so-called vulnerable ripping off the system as well. So yeah, there are crooks involved, but there are also a lot of people accessing, as he said, $50,000 in the first week of their year-long plan, which they then go and buy a car with.
Absolutely, and
so it's not just criminals. It's actually, well, I suppose that is criminal behaviour, but.
Yes,
it's individuals too.
And that indeed is my point. You know, the scale of spending and fraud is absolutely remarkable, as is the system that's allowed it. So just to your point, Sean, how is it feasible that everyone can front load all the demand? Quick, I need it this week. So the system is so deeply flawed that it's allowed that. And I think every taxpayer should be concerned by it. So, Michael, you win on the remarkable story. Honourable second to Sean.
Thank you.
In that you started out playing out for points.
Yeah.
And the NVIDIA story is really good.
Yeah, totally.
But the bank's performance and its relationship with NVIDIA, to me, is not apparent.
They're all listed, Adam, you idiot. They're all listed on the share market.
It's different share market.
It is. Well, it's a global market now, Michael, you'll find. Absolutely. Absolutely related.
Oh my God. Adam, so what do we do with this kind of score?
Michael, can I just say the score, just in case this affects things? 2-0.
2-0.
It's very hard to work with you two when you're just so stupid sometimes. Like what's a listed stock got to do with a listed stock? Oh.
Honestly.
Doesn't he take it gracefully? Sure.
No, well, look,
Seriously.
I never had a chance. As soon as Michael started going on with NDS, I'm thinking, 2-0.
It's hard to beat. I mean,
I'm down.
yeah.
It's
really
really
hard
damage
to beat.
control with the colluder at this point.
Adam, what are we going to do with him? And so what, do you just judge one of the two stories?
We
or do you
welcome him
mark
back in the
down
second
because of-
half, Michael.
Michael, you won. Move on. Be a gracious winner.
Oh, okay. Number one,
He's a bit lost.
I'm not used to this. I'm not used to
Gracious.
being in this position. But also, in this kind of position, I think WWSD, what would Sean do? And Sean would put his foot on my throat and make sure
And go for 4-0.
that's right, that Adam was marking me down on every possible category and criteria imaginable. So I just want to make sure that it is treated fairly.
No one's finding this funny, Michael. I'm sorry.
2-0. I find that highly amusing.
Do you know what I find slightly irritating? And I mean, I deserve to go down 2-0, except not 1 ounce of melodrama from you this week, Michael. I've had plenty because my stories have been lesser than yours. Yet Adam has gone back on his word that he started with the whole show.
Oh, no. I think I recognised your exceptional melodramatic performance within the scores.
I thought Michelle Bullock saying hell yeah was good.
But you still lost.
Let's go. Okay. Can we go to the break?
We're going to take a quick break. We're just going to settle things down a little bit. We're going to have a cup of tea. We're just going to kind of
No. Bring it on.
we're going to liven things up afterwards with a sleeper story of the week. All right, Sean, we're looking for a sleeper story of the week. Now, a sleeper story is, of course, a story that's flying under the radar a little bit, not getting the attention that we think it deserves, and so we are exposing it for everybody to see. Why do you laugh when I talk about exposing things, Adam?
Because I know the mind that was behind the words, Michael.
Yes, it was in the gutter when I said that. Now, I'm going to go first on this one. The sleeper story.
The longer I work with you two, the further my credibility goes.
Stand proud, Sean. Impervious.
I will stand proud.
I have done a lot of damage to both of you. Now, for my sleeper story,
Here we go.
I would like you both to cast your mind back, way back in history. The year is 2022. Medibank Private has just been hacked by Russian cybercriminals. The medical details of 9.7 million Australians are now on the dark web being released bit by bit. These were dark days back in 2022. Now, fast forward many months to 2024, and Medibank's chickens have come home to roost in the form of a watchdog.
See, given the outbreak of avian flu, I think that's just bad taste.
Actually, it probably is. And it's an horrendously mixed metaphor, isn't it?
Yes,
When you've got-
yes.
But you know what? I'm sticking with it.
Right, go
Because the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner is taking action, not against the Russian hackers, but against Medibank Private for failing to protect the details of their customers. And this could be, theoretically, be very, very, very costly. The watchdog alleges...
Are you saying it's bad that they're doing this?
I'm getting to my point, Sean.
Sorry. Apologies.
That's fine. The watchdog alleges contraventions of Section 13G of the Privacy Act for each of Medibank's 9.7 million customers. There is a maximum penalty here of up to $2.22 million each for each one of those individual accounts. Now, just a bit of quick maths, which is my specialty, of course, that would end up being $21.5 trillion that Medibank would be on the hook for. Can you imagine, just for a moment, what that would do to health insurance premiums for the customers at Medibank? It is not going to happen because in the real world, the fine will not be anything like that. But what this is
Yes.
is a sleeper story.
Yes,
Because
why?
this action by the watchdog will be a wake-up call to businesses, to companies
good.
right around the country, to management, to boards, because it shows exactly where the responsibility lies. The companies have an obligation to their customers to protect their data, and if they don't, the consequences can be dire. What a sleeper story. One for the ages.
Are you just giving up because you're up 2-0? So you're just having a crack at it? That is such a ridiculous. So a regulator has a go at someone for losing data, and it's a sleeper story.
It's a wake-up call, Sean. Which
Wow.
it seems kind of appropriate
You got
for a
to keep
sleeper
trying.
story.
I know you're leading. You can't lose 2-0, but you got to keep trying, Michael.
No, you know what? I am confident. I am fueled by my success in the first half. I know what I've done. I'm sticking with it. I'm sure of myself. It's in the bag, Sean.
Yeah, well, it might be in the bag, but you got to keep trying. You can't have a story like
Dangerous disposition.
No, you know what, Adam? You know what? With people like Sean, you need to stand up to them, don't you? Because
You gotta
otherwise they
bully the
walk all
bullies.
over you. Yep.
Okay.
I wasn't going to say that. Anyway, what have you got, Sean?
Or keep trying.
Mr. Lang. This is a tale, my sleeper story is a tale of Chinese interests trying to skip into Australia and dominate our mineral supply while we were sleeping. Northern Minerals. No one had heard of them before this week, really. It mines at dysprosium and terbium. Never having done chemistry at school, no idea where they are on that table thing that they talk about. But
Periodic table.
Dysprosium and terbium, little known minerals. They're used in the production of high-performance magnets, batteries, and defense equipment. Now, a guy called Wu Tao, a Chinese businessman, bought 9.9% of Northern Minerals a few years back. Then a couple of years ago, he tried to up it to 19.9%. Mr. Wu is a big wig in the Chinese rare earths world. He was knocked back by the Foreign Investment Review Board a couple of years ago. They said on national interest reasons, you can't go to 19.9%. Wu is now accused of orchestrating the buying of shares in the company via a series of related entities and parties. He's basically used kind of other companies and friends to buy up Northern Minerals. That's the allegation. When the buying began last year, the CEO of Northern Minerals, Nick Curtis, reported it to the Foreign Investment Review Board. Fair enough. Shareholders then attempted to remove him as a director, shareholders being some of these Chinese interests. Mr. Curtis actually resigned from the board instead. This is only a couple of weeks ago. This week, Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers ordered companies associated with Wu to sell down their stakes. Such disposal orders are extremely rare in commercial matters in Australia. The implication is that Chalmers has used his power to prevent a surreptitious attempt by Chinese interests to grab control of a promising Australian miner. That is a good sleeper story. But there's more. The day after the announcement, data hacked from Northern Minerals was released on the dark web. The Australian reported that the hackers who accessed the company's systems in March had previously demanded a cash payment in exchange for a promise to delete the data. The ransom was refused by Northern Minerals. Suddenly it appears on the dark web the day after Jim Chalmers said, you've got to get rid of some of your holdings. Now, I'm not actually saying they're related, but the timing's interesting. And the day after that, 4 Chinese-backed shareholders, including Mr. Wu, ran to be directors of the company at a long-delayed AGM. They failed to get up, but Mr. Wu almost got there. This is an amazing tale, really, of a foreign interest trying to slip under the radar and gain control of a very strategically important Australian company. It actually makes you wonder how many more are out there like this. And these are real sleeper stories because, fortunately, this one was caught. But I wonder how many others are out there like that. Just a cracking yarn this week and actually a worthy entry into this category as opposed to my not-so-learned friend.
Seems unnecessarily cruel.
I don't know.
Adam?
Yes.
What do you think?
Well, as we went to the halftime break, Sean had a tough first half.
Oh, I'm liking this.
But if this was a game of rugby, he has just launched in the second half. That was brilliant. So I think this is so fascinating. We've got wine and beef are back on the trade agenda. We've got international airways are being monitored. China and Australia and planes in the air. And we've got Jim Chalmers using disposal powers. There is so much in the geopolitical arena that's interesting about this. And I think that has to win for Sleeper Story of the Week. So, Michael, I have to acknowledge too, though, just exceptional levels of theatre. Again, very commendable. But on the story itself, Sean has to win.
Being a poor winner here, he gets melodrama points. Yeah, right. Yeah, thanks.
Yours was also quite commendable.
Well, no, melodrama is too good a story.
Yeah.
Too good a story.
Yeah.
Out you go. Righto. Favourite story. Can I go first, Michael?
Yes, so adjusting the scores to I had gone off a little early on my little score sheet here. I'd already written 3-0. better revise that down.
Just adjusting the scores.
Yeah, 2-1.
Lovely.
Goodness me. All right, Sean, bring it home. What's your favourite story?
My favourite story is all about the consumer. It's about economics. It's about every single one of us that shops. So not just local, international as well. Huge. I'm talking about the different ways retailers are thinking about attracting customers, and it's actually good for customers. We have this cost of living crisis going on at the moment and high interest rates around the world, and retailers are finding that sales are, if not falling, they're certainly not growing as fast. So they're trying all sorts of things to become more attractive to customers walking in the door. Now, this week, the US pharmacy group Walgreens, which is massive, it said it's going to lower prices on over 1,000 items. Target, the US Target, announced price cuts on 5,000 food products. It's not overly innovative, but it's great to see that for customers. Walmart in April introduced a private label food line for the first time, a bit behind some of the plate guys here, but 70% of the products in that line will cost less than $5. IKEA, they're starting to drop prices. During the March quarter earnings updates in the US, some of the US companies said they plan to slow price increases, find other ways to expand profits. Starbucks, Coca-Cola, those sorts of guys. The one I thought was really fascinating was fast food group Wendy. It floated the idea of pricing goods differently depending on peak demand periods. So, Wendy's basically ice creams between 3:30 and 5 when kids get out of school and rush to Wendy's, up the prices. Between, 10 and 11:30 when those retirees spending their money, up the prices. However, at 2 o'clock, an ice cream might cost less. Very kind of economically sound, won't ever fly. Even McDonald's is struggling. Like it's facing a consumer backlash because the average cost of Big Mac is up about 20% over the past 5 years. I just think it's a really interesting tale of how the economy works. So my favourite story as an economist, my favourite story of the week.
I love that you started by talking about how it's all about innovative thinking by retailers. And it wasn't until we finally got to Wendy's that there was a little bit of innovation.
Michael. Well, cutting prices is innovative. I don't come and critique your stories.
Never been tried before, Sean. Let's get more customers through the door. How do we do that? Oh, could we take a little bit off the top? 10% off? Anyway, look, that's just minor details. I'm trying on being Sean for once, and it's not very comfortable, to be honest.
Yeah, this is a baffling role play change.
Yeah, I know. I'm just
listening to that wasn't very comfortable either. So me being Michael wasn't very, very comfortable. So let's go back to our old ways.
Oh God, I'm taking off my Sean suit and putting back on the.
Put your pants back on, Michael.
Putting on the birthday suit instead. Here we go. This will liven things up. No, I'm just kidding. I'm fully clothed. Okay, favorite story. I had a little bit of trouble picking a favorite story this week because really, when I looked back across the week, they were all so good. There were so many options. So. I'm doing something a little bit unusual today with my favourite story. I'm going to choose one entirely at random from all the stories that we have covered throughout the week. I've got them all here.
Adam, do you feel that there's a little bit of melodrama in this story yet?
No, this is
Michael, Michael, I'm talking to Adam.
It's like the theme music kicking in and a bit of dry ice smoke coming onto the stage before the main actor comes in.
I am firing up my random story generator here. I have put all of the stories from the week in, and I'm going to pluck one out at random. And here it is, without any planning whatsoever. Do we have any fans of the Wu-Tang Clan here in the room? Adam? I could see your eyes lighting up. What a coincidence.
Yes.
What a coincidence. Well, you might just be interested in this story this morning. Yes. The Mona Gallery in Tasmania is about to exhibit an album, Adam, that is so rare and so valuable that only a few people, only a handful of people have ever actually listened to it. Now, look at this. This is really quite remarkable. I've struck it lucky with this story, picking this one out at random. The album apparently is called Once Upon a Time in Shaolin. It was recorded in secret by the Wu-Tang Clan and produced over a period of 6 years. They made one single, just one 2 CD copy. And then get this. They deleted all the original master files so they could never make any more. They wrapped the album up in a legal agreement that says it can't be commercially exploited until 2103. So that is another 70-something years.
Look at the mind going.
look at the brain just scrambling.
Is this your quick maths again?
Another 70-something years until someone can whip out the CD burner and make a copy of this album. In the meantime, there is just this one copy in a special nickel silver casing. It's going to be at Mona for just over a week, where a limited number of tickets are available to listen to a curated 36-minute mix from the album, played from a personalized Wu-Tang PlayStation 1. And what I love about this story, what I really love about this, which of course I'm only just finding out now because all of this was entirely unplanned, I'm researching it as we go, is the journey that the album has had over the last decade or so. It was sold at an auction in 2015 for a record $2 million to Martin Shkreli, who tried and failed to sell it on eBay. If that name does sound familiar, he's one of the most notorious and controversial businessmen in recent years. He hiked the price of a life-saving HIV drug by 5,000%, and you can imagine how that went down. It was a pretty awful time in US kind of corporate news. He was jailed for...
What the hell has this got to do?
It is colour, Sean. It is adding context. It is the journey.
I've got to say, I had stopped listening, and then the next thing I hear is selling something on eBay, and I'm like, what the hell has that got to do with this story? I'm confused.
Bring it home, Michael.
It is the journey. It is the journey that this extraordinary album has taken to get to Tasmania. This man was jailed for defrauding investors. The US Department of Justice seized assets. And you know what one of those assets was that they seized? They seized this album, this rare, one-of-a-kind album. They sold it to a digital art collector for $4 million. And now it's wound its way down to the Southern Hemisphere, just probably on a plane.
Oh, no, I thought it would have walked.
It's landed at Mona, where it is going to be treated like a work of art and where I am sure Adam will be lining up to listen to it. What an extraordinary stroke of luck that this was my randomly selected favourite story of the week. Adam, do you agree?
Wow. Okay. So, Michael, your story machine got cranked up and what we end up is the Wu-Tang Clan. Did the story machine inform you of any of the members of the Wu-Tang Clan?
Oh.
I need a deal breaker here because I'm
go on.
a bit lost. So, Michael, any members that you can name without Googling the machine?
Fingers to yourself.
I mean, there's so many. I wouldn't want to name one and leave some out. So
let's just take that as a no.
Isn't there about 9 or something like? There's a bunch of them.
Steve?
I think there's at least 10.
Steve? Yeah. Is there a John maybe?
So
what about
Wayne?
a Bill? Charlie perhaps?
Just give you a couple of names.
Yeah.
Inspector Deck.
Oh, yeah, loved him.
Ghostface Killer.
Yeah, no, good.
Old Dirty Bastard.
Probably my favourite.
Method Man.
How do you know this? Do you
to
just know this stuff, Adam?
Well, I was fascinated by the Wu-Tang Clan when they first came out. And they had a line of clothing called Wu-Wear, which was very gregarious. Not my cup of tea, but I did like it.
Mm.
You're gregarious. Just don't sell yourself short. No, but sure, Wu-Tang Clan is not really my cup of tea, but I can still be fascinated by the story and the fact that this album is so rare, one of a kind, and it's going to be here in Australia. The fact that it's even kind of that there will be people getting to listen to it, when really you could almost count on one hand
Michael,
the number of people who have heard it.
Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Disappointing.
Oh, geez, so tough.
It's not tough. I'm sorry. It is not tough. I'm going to let you in on a little secret here, Adam.
Role reversal once again.
I didn't choose this at random. I chose it because I know you like the Wu-Tang Clan. There you go. Secret's out. I don't have a random story generator. It was rigged.
The cheating colluder.
No, I'm just kidding. It is random.
I actually have to say, I'm going to give you a draw on this one because, look, retailers' pricing, dynamic pricing, it's not brand new.
Or exciting.
So
it is for Wendy's.
Well, no, I do actually find it exciting, and I do find the Wu-Tang Clan exciting. And Mona is amazing. So the thought of going to Mona to listen to this album is actually highly appealing to me.
You need to line
You're
up.
going to get a
Let's be
draw
clear.
on that one.
We're going to draw.
And apparently, it's as equally appealing as going to Wendy's and getting a slightly more expensive ice cream. That is what you're saying here. That listening to this album is the equivalent of a Wendy's ice cream.
So, no, it's a draw. Michael, you've won, but I feel a moral victory because how Wendy's won over Wu-Tang Clan, or at least drew with, I will never know. You have
Nor
won
do
2.5 to 1.5, but I
This is
feel a
extraordinary.
moral victory.
Yeah, I think you deserve that.
Particularly a strong second half, Sean.
Thank you.
Fight back.
Thank you.
All right, 2.5 to 1.5. What was the points, the breakdown?
This is remarkable.
It's remarkable.
In itself, 93 points each. Dead heat.
Oh, so it's not even a win to you, Michael, I'd like to say.
No,
With the
2.5 to
NDIS.
1.5. That's still a win. That is still a win. I will still take
Michael is the winner.
that. Oh, excellent.
Right on.
Game of two halves.
Good result overall and a very good battle. And I've learnt a lot about the Wu-Tang Clan.
Spirited competition and melodramatic.
Indeed. It's fairly light on melodrama, I feel, this week. Anyway, thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you, Adam.
Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great weekend.